Hello and welcome to Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast with your host, Buddy Sotello Esquire and Evan Ginzburg. Do you want to introduce our guest for tonight?
Absolutely. We are honored to have him returning on the show from Turnbuckle Turmoil Radio Show. He is the distinguished Coach Mike Jones. How are you tonight, Mike?
Doing fine. Thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it. We were hoping we can get Sign Guy on so we can get a little interview with him since you guys have already had me on. But
that's okay. We'll try to get him on later. No problem at all. So tell us what's been happening with Turnbuckle Turmoil and your various other endeavors.
Man, we've had lots of great guests. We've been doing 2 to 3 shows a week. We got Leatherface coming up, Bill Anderson, Mustang Mike. Today we did the Suicide Kings. They were big in the Northwest. One of the Suicide Kings, Matt Farmer, he's one of like the historians of Northwest wrestling. He's got the inside track on doing a book for Playboy Buddy Rose, but he informed me today that the way things are going, there's a chance it'll never see the light of day because different legal stuff, and it's just sort of caught up in the air. But I'm always hoping and praying that he's going to help finish the Playboy Buddy Rose book.
I saw Buddy Rose headline Madison Square Garden against Bob Backlund. Also wrestled Pedro Morales for the Intercontinental belt. He was a big star in the WWF. People remember him 10 years later where they weren't quite using him as well. But when he came in, he was great. He really was a top-notch performer.
Yeah, and he did good all over the world, too, you know, AWA, California, all over, yes.
So, Buddy?
Yeah, I'm right now trying to get our second guest on here. He is available, but I'm trying to log him in. So
we'll continue with Mike.
Yeah, continue with the conversation while I do this technical move here.
And Mike, I used to read Ring Around the Northwest, the old newsletter, the old sheet, and that was a great territory.
Yes. And then we've had Mike Rogers on. We're going to have him again, and he's got his book, The Excitement in the Air, Volume 1 and Volume 2's out now. Both of them are available on Amazon. And then we had the guy who helped Mike Rogers make that book, Frank Culbertson. He was the leader and the organizer of Portland Wrestling. Looks like Sign Guy's in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Technical difficulties notwithstanding, we are also joined by Jason Amos, Sign Guy. We'll and your resume is long and storied, but we'll let Coach Mike Jones finish what he was saying here, and then we'll. By the way, we see you very well now. You might want to I can actually get COVID from you at this point if you get any closer.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had Frank Culbertson called in and talked to Nikki Sixx and Matt Farmer of the Suicide Kings. He really enjoyed working with them, and like I said, he helped Mike Rogers make those Excitement in the Air books. So yeah, we've had lots of good guests and special guests, and we're looking to book you guys back, and we're having Authors Month come up also. So
awesome.
Yes,
I have a warm spot in my heart for guys like Mike Rogers who just love the business, never made big money, with his publications, but just needed to, do the sheet, do these books, just a real pure love of pro wrestling, guys like Mike Rogers. And, people should know more about them. There's a lot of guys churning out, raw reviews every 12 minutes and, doing absolute schlock, making big money. And, let's publicize the little guys also. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, definitely.
And Jason Amos has joined us, Sign Guy Jason Amos. He's managed, wrestled, ring announced, refereed, timekeeper, security, co-owner of an indie promotion, booker, and probably a few other things we're leaving out. Welcome to the show, first time Jason Amos. How are you?
Doing very well. Thank you very much. Sorry I was late, but we had the technical difficulty gimmick going.
The miracles of modern technology.
Exactly. Yeah. At least you're here. At least we're able to talk with you. And yeah, I checked your resume, and it is quite a resume. And in those 6 degrees of separation, you sometimes in the wrestling world it becomes 1 degree, and in our 1 degree of separation is Moondog Moretti. I worked extensively with him at All Pro Wrestling, and he is quite a character. So I know that if you've got your experience with Moondog Moretti, I definitely would say hi to him next time I have a chance to see him. Or we've talked about getting him on the show. Hopefully, one of the days he'll be our guest here, because I did work with him a lot in the early days of APW. What do you guys want to say about Moondog Moretti?
I didn't know Moondog very well, like Coach probably did. I worked more with his son-in-law, Buddy Wayne, and his grandson, Nick, and both of them great talents.
Yeah, myself in my I was about 6 matches in my career, and I got to wrestle Moondog Moretti at my home arena, the South End Boys and Girls Club, where I grew up at. I played sports there. My son played sports there. I coached my son there, and now I get to wrestle there, and I get to wrestle Moondog Moretti. He is one tough customer.
Yeah, he's pretty wild. He's pretty crazy. He perfected the spitting up in the air and catching your own spit gimmick.
Yeah,
that was one of.
That was quite a match, and I had so much heat going in that match. Of course, I was the face, but it went 18 minutes, and I won by countout. But during the match, he threw me out of the ring towards my fan section, and ironically, somehow I landed it right where my son was. He picked up my son's chair and hit me with my son's chair right. My son was 6 years old. He just busted into tears.
Oh, no. Wow.
Yeah.
And both of you guys have worked with some really huge names over the years. Off the top of my head, guys like Kevin Sullivan. Tell us about some of the legends you both worked with.
How about you, Sign?
I've been very, very fortunate. I've worked with a lot of great people. Kevin Sullivan, like you said. Tommy Rich, Doug Gilbert, Bill Eadie,
wow.
Coach Mike Jones. I've worked with Matt Bourne. I officiated his very last match in Portland, Oregon, before he passed away. Chaz Taylor, Flash Flanagan, Dice Man Ronnie Vegas, Bobo Brazil Jr. There's so many. Tracy Smothers, Hacksaw Duggan, Casey Carlisle, Jesse Bell, Smothers. There's been a lot. I worked with a lot of great people.
The Honky Tonk Man.
Honky Tonk Man, yes. Yes,
now, that's someone we have in common, because he was on my very first show that I was a manager on. Was Honky Tonk Man came to All Pro Wrestling. What are some of your thoughts on the Honky Tonk Man?
I officiated one match he did. It was a 6-man tag in Portland. And on the other side from him was Kevin Sullivan. It was the first time they'd worked in the same match in quite a while. Of course, they were regular tag partners in Memphis in the early 80s, but they hadn't worked in a match together in decades at that point. So it was a interesting 6-man tag that day, to be sure.
So what was the one match, I'll ask you both, where you're in the ring and you look across from you and you're pinching yourself, I can't believe I'm working with this guy, like a childhood hero? Or what was the one match where you go, wow, this is like a dream come true?
Well, myself, getting to work with Jake the Snake more than once. Got to work on the Jim Rose Circus tour, the Jim Rose Circus versus Jake the Snake tour. Got to work with him a couple times, not there. And then I got to actually wrestle him in a match at Freak Show Wrestling at Sin Bodhi's deal down at Knox Pro in California, Rikishi's gym.
That's a huge legend. Where do you rate Jake among the all-time greats?
Oh, he's definitely in the top 50.
There you go.
It's hard.
I could agree with that.
Yeah.
And Jason, what about you? Who did you look at and go, wow, I'm in here with him?
Honestly, anyone I've ever been in with.
Really?
Just anytime I'm in there, like I'm getting to do this with this guy, and it's a distinct and separate pleasure every single time, honestly. I know one time I was in there with Doug Gilbert and his father and brother are what hooked me on wrestling, and there I am with Doug wrestling in a match with him, and then he started shooting on me a little bit. So that was a unique experience, but we came out of it all well, and everything was fine by the next day.
I don't think a lot of fans even realize some of the names you're mentioning, like Moondog Moretti and Doug Gilbert. These guys have worked all over the world with the biggest names. They've had very distinguished careers. You know, a lot of people, like, if they weren't stars in WWE, they didn't exist, and they're dead wrong. These guys have had great careers, worked with everyone, almost everywhere, and
let's use the correct term. Evan, let's use the correct term. They're overrated, right? You know, that's what
the misguided fans say.
Yeah, that's their buzzword, is to say that everybody's overrated, and that, you know, if you weren't on AEW or Impact or the WWE two shows ago, you're nothing in professional wrestling. Your career meant nothing to the history of wrestling. And that's one of the reasons why we do this show, is to remind people that it's people like both of you that made wrestling what it is today. And you can't, you know, granted, the little brick on the side of the pyramid isn't the one that you look at all the time when you see the pyramids, but without that little brick, you wouldn't have the pyramid to build upon, you know. And all great structures, like what wrestling is and has become, started with guys like you guys. And so do you feel like there's a loss of today's kids to understand, like, in the youth of today that's coming up watching wrestling, to understand like what you guys have provided to make wrestling what it is?
Well, I do. It's like, you know, we do this podcast, Turnbuckle Turmoil. I've done my NGW Green Room with hundreds of interviews. I've booked hundreds of wrestlers. And my goodness, it seems like hardly anybody wants to like them and comment and share. I'm like, dude, don't you know the 101 of wrestling is all about promotion? You know, it's like, you don't even like and share your own video I put you in. It's like,
yeah, they're busy critiquing Raw.
Yeah, exactly.
But I guess, you know, this is what I've one of these nuts that I've been trying to crack with talking to people about wrestling is that there's this, our generation, okay, your generation, my generation, we actually liked the historical element of wrestling and saying, oh, look at, you know, the lineage of champions. You know, I could at one point name you every WWF champion and every WWF tag champion and every intercontinental champion. And that meant something, like the lineage of all that stuff. And we used to be proud of stuff like that. We didn't say like, oh, Bruno Sammartino sucked. You know,
yeah.
You know, all he ever did was a bear hug. He never did a swanton bomb or you know, a 360 or pile drove somebody through a flaming table. You know, and so, but I never looked at wrestling like that, where I would look at the people before me or the wrestling that was before me and just blast it and say it was no good. You know, sometimes we'd say, okay, it was a little bit more punchy and choky than what you'd have, like, you know, in the 80s and 90s. But still, the idea of telling a story in the ring was important. That's all gotten lost. What do you guys think?
I think it's generational. I think what people of one generation come up liking and thinking is proper is not necessarily what the generation before it or the generation after it views and sees as what is good. And so I think that kind of conflicts with people's taste. And when somebody of one generation prefers what they saw and what they liked, and the person of the generation before or after it sees it, it's not necessarily what they're going to see and like. So I think that's where a lot of it comes in today. And because of social media, people tend to see the opinions more frequently than they did before. Years ago, there was no social media, so you didn't know if somebody didn't like a wrestler because they didn't do ABC in the ring. It just wasn't something you would ever know, really. But
I
now
think,
with social media,
part of the problem, though, is we mentioned before Buddy Rose. So I'll see quite frequently guys go, "Oh, he was just a big fat jobber," and I'm like, "No, you're rewriting history. You're spitting on his legacy." I said, I saw the guy main event Madison Square Garden. I saw the guy in the co-feature at Madison Square Garden. I saw the guy in all top matches and throughout the territory and for forever in the Pacific Northwest, headlining. So you can't rewrite history and go, "Oh, he was just a jobber." It's ridiculous. And then you'll see so-and-so was overrated. Bruno Sammartino, Ric Flair. Now just pick a name out of a hat and go to town on them. And I'm like, you aren't there. You have no reference point. And the flip side of that is the old school guys, and I'm 103 years old, who go, there was no good wrestling since the territories. None. There was no good wrestling in 40 years. They're all spot monkeys. That's insane also. There's no good wrestling in 40 years? Come on. So, and I think it takes a toll when thousands and thousands of people say the same thing. Ric Flair sucked. Bruno sucked. It's like, after a while, I think people start to really think that. They really, and they're just wrong. They're wrong.
And I think what I was trying to get to is that it seems like we've gone from a level of we could appreciate 80s, I'm just putting myself as an 80s fan. I'll just say that was the prime time for me was the 80s. I was able to watch stuff from the 50s and 60s and 70s and enjoy it for what it was. I didn't have to compare it to what we were doing in the 80s and say, well, what we do in the 80s is so great, it makes the 70s worthless. And there was nothing of any value in the 70s. And I think culturally, we're getting to this point where it's got to be your decade, and your style of wrestling that is the best, and everything else has no value. That's where I think the real problem
I see that on music pages, the same nonsense.
You can apply it to entertainment of any genre, the mainstream sports, music, television shows. People tend to gravitate towards what they grew up with and what their tastes were when they were young, and then a lot of people don't deviate from that taste. And so that's where now you see with social media people expressing it and people seeing those expressions of the opinions more than they used to.
But logically, every decade, whether it's music, film, wrestling, you're going to have good, bad, horrible, great, classic. Every decade's going to run the gamut. It's not even logical. I've seen guys actually write all of that 70s wrestling was boring. All. I mean, come on, that's ridiculous. I mean, anytime you use the word all, it's wrong, except all of us will die one day. That's correct. All of us will pay taxes, except the super rich.
Yeah, exactly.
But my point being, once you use that word all, it's just misguided. And, I'm not a particularly big fan of WWE, but I'm not going to say it's all horrible. even you're just proving yourself wrong when you say all.
But what you can say is that what's there is too hard to get to and too painful to sit through 3 hours of. If it's only 8 or 9 minutes of actually good wrestling, sandwiched between commercials and reruns and promos of what's going to be the next pay-per-view and skits that are just not even funny to my kids who are 10 and a half years old.
They're too sophisticated for those skits.
They are. It is. They've looked at some of those. My 10 and a half year old kids have watched things on the WWE and said, Dad, that was stupid.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't argue it. I go like, yeah, it was. I don't even know. My 10 and a half year olds don't understand why I like wrestling so much, which is terrible because at 10 and a half, I couldn't have loved anything more than professional wrestling. When I was watching it as a kid, I thought it was but then again, wrestling was kind of a treat to watch back in the day. And you were more like, the Pacific Northwest was more like what happened here in California. We didn't get as many matches as they got out in New York City, for example. We didn't have a Madison Square Garden that drew matches every month. So when guys came into your territory, and I know what usually happened was they'd perform in Northern California, get in a car, and drive all the way up to Seattle, to Portland, to Seattle, and do the whole coast, upper coast, and then maybe fly to Japan, or do it the other way around, fly from Japan up to the Northwest and then drive down to San Francisco and LA. So we often not only had the same talent that we shared, a lot of times we had the same matches. Especially in the days before the internet and anyone would get online and say, oh, by the way, Pat Patterson is going over Ray Stevens, with the bombs away or something like that, or with a Boston Crab or something like that. That would all get spoiled, nowadays. But back then, you could wrestle the same guy, 2 days later, wrestle him down in California, and it was the crowds would all be hot for it.
Yeah, definitely.
And so that is a big change.
So Jason, what do you consider some career highlights?
Wow, I've had lucky. I've been really fortunate. Multiple time Blue Collar Wrestling YouTube champion when they had that going. Multiple time HPW Tag Team champion when the High Rollers worked as a unit and they had the Freebird rule going, so we all basically held it. 2013 Hoosier Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame inductee. I was very proud of that, even though I was injured right before my induction, so I missed my own induction. I also, like I said, had the distinction of being the official in Matt Bourne's final wrestling match in Portland.
Who's that?
So many highlights. I've had a really, really fortunate career.
Who's our special guest behind you?
That is our Pussycat Apple. We just lost our Pussycat Terry Funk the other day, so he's being very...
Oh, really? You named your cat after Terry Funk?
Wow. Yes.
I did.
That's dedication. That's old school dedication.
He was aware at one point because when I was on a road trip with Kevin Sullivan, we had to swing by my place really quick to let him use the facilities. And I said, Terry Funk, we're home. She come running over. And Kevin called Terry Funk to let him know I had a cat in my place.
Yeah.
And was named Terry Funk.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's awesome.
That's very good. That's very good.
And
yeah.
I have a Tai Chi teacher named Kevin Sullivan, for real.
Nice.
Yeah, not the same guy, obviously, but yeah. So, Coach, what do you consider some of your proudest moments?
Well, getting to go to Heroes and Legends a couple times. I was honored to get to go there once with Sign Guy since he's from Indiana. And then, of course, wrestling at Cauliflower Alley a few times, and Real School Army with me, Mustang Mike, Andrew Anderson, Kevin Sullivan, and Nyla Kennedy. We beat, what's his name? Chaz Taylor, Iron Horse, and Sam Houston. So that was and those guys are some tough characters, you know?
I used to see Sam Houston in Philly with the NWA every month, and he was top notch. I mean, Vince took him later and wasted him, but in the NWA, Sam Houston was great. Yeah,
definitely. And hey, I got another comment I want to make. It might be a little long-winded, but people don't know what Sign Guy has actually done for wrestling, done for myself, done for this area. I mean, he's been carrying Turnbuckle Turmoil for about 10 years now.
10 years? Wow. Okay.
Today was the 1706th show.
Wow. We have a ways to catch up to that.
And then Sign has been doing stuff like picking up Kevin Sullivan. I mean, how many times have you picked up Kevin Sullivan, Sign? 50 times or what?
Probably more than that.
Exactly. And I would be willing to bet you he did it for free half the time. You know, that's dedication to wrestling that people don't know. You know, and he's just a selfless person. I'm really grateful for him. It's an honor to be on his podcast. I got to take QT Vokes' place. And Evan, you was on with QT Vokes in the past, right?
Yeah, back in the day.
Yeah. And by the way, Jason, I would be remiss if I didn't actually ask you, why is your name the Sign Guy? Where did you get the name Sign Guy from?
Given to me by the promoter that broke me in Indiana. I used to take signs that would be glued onto cookie sheets and pans and so forth, and then at some point during a match, it would accidentally fall out of my hand and into the hand of the Dice Man Ronnie Vegas, who would clobber a guy.
Yeah.
And at some point, the name Sign Guy came in, and they kind of broke me into the business that way. I wasn't a traditional, hey, let's get you in the ring and train you type of thing. It was basically they used me on the spot and taught me what they needed to teach me as I went.
Did you?
So here's my big question. I have one big question.
Sure.
You've done 1,700 plus shows. What does that mean to you? What do you consider that legacy? Because there's not many shows that have been around for 1,700 episodes, maybe 60 minutes. You know, yeah. But I mean, any show 1,700 is quite impressive. What does that, you know, library of content mean to you? Because a lot of those guests are gone now. They're gone.
A lot of them are. You know, Dale Pierce, you were on the tribute show we did for him. He's gone. Gentleman Jim Chadwick, who is a legendary manager in Kentucky. Moondog, Fifi. We've lost a lot of them, but we also have a lot of people that we have interviewed before they were ever big stars. Danhausen, Thunder Rosa, Nyla Rose, all were on our show years before there was ever an AEW.
Right.
Jason Ayers, my teacher who taught me how to referee, he was on our show. He was post Ring of Honor, but a few years pre-WWE. So he was one of my early guests when I joined the show. We've had a lot of people's very first interview ever. There was a lot of people that never did an interview before coming on to our show, and I think that's a big part of our legacy because we helped them prepare for that aspect of the business. And it's a big part of the business. You have to be able to do media when you get to a certain level, and they got their first exposure to that with us. So there's a lot of things that I think our legacy ends up being over the long haul, and those are some of the key ones, I think.
And the beauty of it is 20 years from now, 30 years from now, you know, somebody's gone and their niece or nephew, whoever the case may be, you know, they pull it up and there he is, you know.
Well, we
right
just
there,
had that
right there.
with JJ Maguire. We
Yeah.
just had that very thing happen with JJ Maguire.
JJ Maguire, who did a ton of the WWE and the WCW entrance themes, he was on our show. He just passed away a week or two ago. So, there it is forever for his family, friends to enjoy. And to me, that's
We had
me.
a wrestler up here named Sonny O'Mara, the coach and I both worked with countless times. He passed away a few months ago, and I know his widow and his kids went back and they listened to the interview. I did an interview with Sonny where we sent him the questions in advance, and then I just read the answers for him because he was mute and unable to speak due to a previous stroke. And it was something that they were able to take comfort in and listen to and enjoy in the days and the weeks right after Sonny passed.
I would say in the grand scheme of things, that episode of your show is far more meaningful than somebody reviewing this week's Raw, SmackDown, Impact, etc. Really. And I don't think a lot of people grasp that.
But that's what I'm proud about with this show and with others, that go in and talk to the real people that make all this stuff happen, not just about what's going on in the ring.
Yeah, it's a real legacy, you guys.
Does Apple want to add anything to the show? Because she sure is. Go ahead and put her on camera. We're a very pet-friendly show.
Yeah, let's interview her.
She really wants to.
Here, kitty.
There she is.
So, Kitty, what's your take on pro wrestling?
Yeah.
A thumbs up, a thumbs down. Yeah.
She's probably happy that she's not named after Terry Funk.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, also tell me a little bit about why you think the Pacific Northwest is a special territory for wrestling in general. Tell me what makes that a more stand out as one of the great territories in all of wrestling.
I think a lot of it has to do with it was geographically separated so much that not a lot of people got to see it as it was happening. So a lot of people knew the names that came out of Portland. They knew Buddy Rose, Roddy Piper, Jesse Ventura, people like that.
Jimmy Snuka.
But they didn't get to see the Portland era of it. So I think around the country it was sort of an enigma. But the people that were here, that they got to see all these people that went on to become household names, they got to see them in a more intimate setting because Portland was, for a large portion of the area, a pretty small town territory. You didn't have the mega population density that a lot of territories did. So in Portland, they would go to Longview, Washington regularly, Kelso, Washington, small towns in Oregon, and they would wrestle in high school gyms. So you would have the NWA World Champion wrestling a Portland main eventer in a high school gym in front of 800 to 900 people. And that was just a regular thing that happened in the territory. The people in the small towns saw it as normal, but a lot of these people that research wrestling in the territory days, they don't fully grasp it. It's sort of an enigma because they didn't have that in a lot of places.
So what was some of the 2 or 3 greatest matches you both saw in the territory when you were kids, younger? I mean, what were some of the great matches you saw?
Well, myself, I got to see Ric Flair face Billy Jack, Roddy Piper, and Sting, all in separate matches, of course, in the Seattle Arena. Those were legendary.
Wow.
And then, of course, I also seen in Tacoma, I seen Andre the Giant versus Playboy Buddy Rose.
There you go.
That was a crazy match. Of course, Buddy cheats, takes advantage of him, pulls out some brass knuckles, hits him like 30 times in the head.
Yeah.
Bloodied him up till Andre got mad, threw him against the ropes, gives him the boot, and Buddy's out of there. Set it up for Seattle. Then I also seen Ed Wiskowski and Buddy Rose when Buddy Rose was wearing a mask with hair on it in a loser leaves town match versus the Bushwhackers, or they were the
Sheepherders
in Tacoma. Buddy Rose, Ed Wiskowski wins, starts putting the boots to the Sheepherders, and out comes Roddy Piper and Rick Martel that set up the match for them for the next time.
Awesome.
So those are some really good ones.
Awesome. And Jason, what about you?
I grew up in Indiana, so I didn't see the Portland stuff live, but the
Who'd you see in Indiana?
First show I went to, it was a Dick the Bruiser spot show at the Camp Atterbury National Guard Armory. Main event was Dick the Bruiser versus Wild Polynesian Man. Bruiser won the match, of course, but he turned about 15 shades of red and blue when he was being choked on the ropes. He had to be close to 60 at that point.
Wow.
In intermission, I went into the ring and I got the autograph of then Calypso Jim, and he went on to become Bobo Brazil Jr. and was instrumental in helping me get into the wrestling business. So that was kind of, I wouldn't say it was like a historic match or anything, but as far as I go, that was pivotal for me.
There you go. There you go.
So do both of you guys look back on your careers and say there was something that you wish that you could have done in the ring or involved in wrestling that you haven't done or think that you'd like to still do, as part of your careers? What are you sort of like thinking is unfinished business that you might have?
Well, back in 99, when I was I figure I was probably in my prime, I was a local champ, and, I guess I had a little bit of a big head, but WWE came down to Tacoma Dome. I called him up, and it was Kevin Kelly, I think. And I said, he didn't answer, so I left a message. I said, hey, I'm coming down to try out. He called me back and said, please don't come down. And then also before that, I sent in tapes to WWE. And I got a letter back from them saying that they're not accepting any new talent right now, but they'll keep my tapes and this and that.
They still have them, probably.
I'm sure they
call
do.
any day now.
And one of my lifelong dreams was I didn't care. As long as I could come out at the Tacoma Dome, have them call my name, then I didn't care if the Giant clubbed me down and had me stretchered out. As long as I got my name called in my hometown, I would have been happy. But, of course, it never happened. But maybe someday.
And Jason, your thoughts?
Honestly, anything that I've ever done, I didn't think I'd get to that point anyway. So every time I do something, it's just a gift added onto my career. I've gone to several different states. I got to work Gouge Pro Wrestling in North Carolina, which was my only dream in life. They invited me back even. So anytime I get to go out there, that's just a dream on top of a dream. So anything that happens to me, I didn't expect it going into it, so it just wasn't so much a dream as it was just something that I got to do and got to add to my resume, and it just keeps going and going from there.
There you go. Anything you guys would like to plug, feel free.
Yeah, you can check me out at Coach Mike Jones on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. Also, don't forget to check out the Real School Army and then the NGW Green Room, where I've got hundreds of videos on YouTube of interviews from all types of legends and people in different areas and different backgrounds.
Jason?
You can find me on the Book of Faces. There's a Sign Guy fan page, the YouTube /The Sign Guy 77. You can find me on the Twitters at Sign Guy HPW. Go to blogtalkradio.com, search Turnbuckle Turmoil. You will find us there. Also, real quick, I just want to say I want to send my best wishes out to a young lady who was injured very seriously today at Warrior Pro Wrestling in Danville, Indiana.
Oh, no.
Young lady, Logan Latour, struck the turnbuckle face first extremely hard, enough to crack her skull and fracture her sinuses. She's going to have surgery. I had a very, very, very similar incident involving that same exact ring when it was owned by a different company. I didn't have to have surgery. I was lucky, but I know exactly what she's going through, so I want to wish her well and hope she recovers.
Wow. And let me do a quick plug or two. Over at WrestleCon this coming weekend, meet Tommy Rich and the Rock and Roll Express. They'll be signing, and check out my Evan Ginzburg's Old School Wrestling Memories page on Facebook. And buddy, any last questions for our guests?
Yeah, I would like to ask these guys, if you wanted to give a word of advice out to people who wanted to get into wrestling and to be able to succeed in the way that you guys have succeeded, what advice would you give them?
Go to Coach Mike Jones and get trained.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Anyway, I'm sure you got some more, Sign.
I always tell kids, make sure you get trained, make sure you listen to all the advice. It doesn't mean that it applies to you necessarily, but listen to all of it, figure out what works best for you, and always tuck your chin.
Okay, and then I know we got started late, but I got a couple more things I want to add.
Please.
Please do.
Don't forget to check out Sign Guy's. He's got his own video deal he does called Sign of the Times. He just released Sign of the Times 524, so he's racking them up there too.
How would people get to see that, Jason?
YouTube, and then the Sign Guy 77.
Good.
And then Sign Guy is the caretaker of Chicken Bob. He's a nice character we got here in the Northwest also. And then, Evan, have you got to see the Korean movie Unstoppable yet?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, yeah, that's one you still need to check out. And then also, Evan, are you interested in trying to get some wrestling going in Korea with us?
Yeah, that would be great. That would be fun.
We got Leatherface coming on. He's a contact to get it going. Between the three of us, I think we can make a mark.
He's a friend of mine. I know him. Yeah.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. That would be an experience.
Exactly. And so my advice is to be humble, be selfless. Make sure you're out there wanting to help and promote and set up and tear down and ask if there's anything else you can do. And tell all your friends and share and promote and just do everything you can for wrestling and treat people the way you want to be treated. Do the best you can and never give up.
Those are inspiring words.
You guys love the business, and sometimes you have some very bitter people that don't love the business and do more harm than good. I've seen it.
Yeah.
I appreciate what you contributed to it, which is unfortunate.
I tell people all the time, I've met some of the greatest people I've ever met in wrestling, and I've met people I wouldn't spit on if they were on fire, one extreme or the other, you know?
Yeah.
Does tend to bring the most out of all of us. So anyway,
these are two of the good ones.
I wanted to hang on with Evan for a second or so after you guys. So wanted to dismiss you guys and thank you so much for your contributions this week.
I want to
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys for everything you do and appreciate you having us on and look forward to working with you guys in the future.
Absolutely.
Definitely,
We'd love to have you on as a guest again in the future, both of you guys.
Thanks you
so
guys.
much.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
All right. Good night.
Bye-bye.
And good
Thank
night.
you.
So yes, now Evan, it's you're in my corner for a couple extra minutes here. Just you and me 1-on-1. First of all, wanted to say something about the death of Pepper Martin, who was, a legend here in the Bay Area, really well known in Northern California as a major force in the early days of professional wrestling for me as a kid growing up. He was he did a lot of announcing, and he was a very familiar voice to those of us here in the Bay Area. So it was sad to see him go this week. And then I wanted to talk to you for a second about the retirement announcement of Triple H and what your thoughts were on that.
I found it almost odd that people were treating it almost like a death. What's his name? Ryback. Ryback said something somewhat critical of him that, he made some promises that weren't kept. Triple H made promises to them that weren't kept. And, you would have thought like Ryback was pissing on the guy's grave or whatnot, the response he got. And, personally, I have nothing but respect for Triple H, the wrestler, tremendous wrestler. I mean, you can't take that away from him. But, he's part of that ruthless corporation. I've read that he's on a committee there that decides who stays and who goes. So when you're future endeavoring 100+ people, including people that you were training and you were weaning, I don't particularly respect that. And
there was this treatment of Johnny Laura, aka China, which I heard was not exactly the. Now again, it's all conjecture because we never had her on the show or anything like that. But when he was dating her, he started going out with Stephanie. There was a lot of stuff that went under the bridge about him basically shorting out China once he got in. Good.
Look, these love triangles or whatnot. That's we don't have all the facts. I'm looking at it more as, a guy who climbed the corporate ladder, and once or twice a year, he'd stroll into WrestleMania or a Saudi pay-per-view, get a huge payday, and the regulars didn't. The guys who were killing themselves day after day after day. And, the nepotism, the corporate stuff didn't really appeal to me. And, I don't think it's sacrilege. I mean, I wish him nothing but the best as far as his health. He has heart issues or whatnot. I hope he lives to 100. But, my friend was Killer Kowalski, who was disappointed when he was older. And, Kowalski did not have a lot of money at the end, and they didn't look out for him. Kowalski used to supply the jobbers to WWE, and with zero
kickback.
He was compensated, but the point being, they just stopped with no notice. Just, it's over, Walter, sorry. No explanation, no nothing. And so Walter wasn't really thrilled with how he was treated by them, and mentioned, he was hurt because Triple H was his protege. So I don't have the same awe and wonder for him overall that some people do, but you can't take away the guy was a great wrestler. He was a great wrestler.
And DX was a huge part of that, the Attitude Era. You can't really
to me that's juvenile. You're 40 years old and you're grabbing your crotch. I'm like, it's like I wasn't particularly impressed by that either. But when the guy got in the ring, the guy could deliver, and you can't take that away from him.
But it is weird to see the reaction of people acting like he died. I do agree with you there, is that there's this, the super fans are acting as if...
Maybe he'll come back at 60 for another WrestleMania with like, fawning. It's like, I don't know. He came back with Shawn Michaels to Saudi Arabia. It was horrible. And you're not allowed to say that because he's on their good list. But
we can say it because we're not on Vince's good list.
Hey, look, I call it as I see it. I said online the other day, I don't have the awe and wonder for The Undertaker. Basically, he's doing Michael Myers. He just suddenly gets up, and it's stupid. But great wrestler, but I wasn't, enamored with the gimmick. Steve Austin, doing a sociopathic, drunken character. That didn't really thrill me, but in the ring, the guy could deliver. So I just don't have this childlike awe and wonder for some of these guys. The guy I thought was great out of the whole bunch was Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels was the total package, because he put on a great match every night of the week, you know, and the character didn't get in the way of the credibility. You see what I'm saying? Like,
I was always worried every time Sean got in the ring that those rods in his back were going to break. And
that's a different story.
Yeah, that he was going to wind up in a wheelchair. You know, so
Eddie Guerrero was as great as anybody, a total package. And, you know, I mean, some of these guys were great. But the wrestling fans have this odd, it's like a school principal with the teachers. They have a good list and a bad list. The good can do no bad, the bad can do no good. And Triple H and Undertaker and some of these guys are always on that good list. And I'm like, I don't think it's so wonderful that the Undertaker's selling $1,000 cameos to his fans and $200 for a photo.
But people are willing to pay it. You know, that's you know, he's able to find suckers and their money, and they.
But I'm just saying it. To me, he's a millionaire, and it's greedy, and I would say that about any greedy millionaire. But he's on the good list, so when you mention that on social media, you're immediately attacked. What the market will bear. I'm like, maybe the guy doesn't have the money, and he's running up a credit card, and he's going to suffer for this. Maybe it's an addiction like alcohol or anything else that he, you know, some dope is going to spend $5,000 to go to WrestleMania.
Or his kid's going to, you know, not go to college.
The kid won't go to college because he had first row at WrestleMania. But, you know, look, journalism and wrestling journalism is one of the lowest forms of journalism. I'm sorry to say. But journalism is you tell the truth as you see it, the truth. And Triple H was a great wrestler. Undertaker was a great performer. Steve Austin was a great performer. You don't have to love them personally. You don't have to love their gimmick, their character. But, you know, you can enjoy what they're doing in the ring. And I did for the most part. For the most part. I didn't particularly like Kane. I thought it was over-the-top cartoonish, and I didn't think he was a great wrestler. I think people today mistake great gimmick with great wrestler. I think there's like this blurred line, especially with The Miz. I hear this all the time. The Miz is great. No, he's not great. It's a great character. He's a great talker. He has great charisma, but he is not putting on great wrestling matches.
I would agree with everything except the great talker and great character.
No, he's a good talker.
He doesn't do it for me. He drives me crazy. And
but that's part of his role. He's an annoying heel. But
then there's what we call making the loop, where you become so annoying it's fun again, like Piper. And then there's like when you just miss making the loop, and then you crash back down. That's the Miz. That's how I see it. That, you know.
All I could say is if you have $5,000 for WrestleMania weekend, go support some of those indie shows. Go support some of those indie wrestlers, and you know, don't be a money muck. And I'll say the other side. I love AEW. I saw just the other day for their next pay-per-view. They're selling $500 and $800 autographed items. You know, that's a bit greedy too. I'm sorry.
It's crazy what people are willing to pay, and of course, you know, if people didn't pay it, then they wouldn't be able to ask for so much. So it's you know, it comes down to, you know, the wrestling fan to say enough is enough. But it's like baseball and football and basketball. You know, prices to go see the Warriors now. If I wanted to go see a Warriors game, cheapest seat I could get would be for over $100.
Yeah,
you know?
Madison Square Garden to see the horrendous Knicks, it's $100 to $3,000 a ticket. And so now that there's no hope of the playoffs, they're graciously doing like $50 tickets on top. I'm going, they're not worth $50.
No. I mean, not. And same thing with you know, Giants seasons tickets, and now that baseball's back and the lockout's over, it's the people are settling in with the fact that, oh my God, the prices for a lot of teams, like even for the A's, who are horrible, they like doubled their seasons tickets, they doubled their ticket prices and cut all their talent. So it's you know, it's hard to justify all of this, and the fans are always the ones that get screwed.
My friend had Yankees seasons tickets for the longest time. He was a salesman. He made a good living. And at one point, it reached over $100,000 a year for these seasons tickets. And after a while, he said, I can't do it anymore. It's just too expensive, and I can't handle it. So,
and yet, sadly, they found somebody to probably grab those up as soon as.
Oh, absolutely, and sell it, a scalper or whatnot. Let me end with this. I saw an interesting documentary. It's called. This is the actual title. It's called "Asshole: A Theory," and it's based on a book. And the entire documentary is about how assholes have taken a bigger role in our society, and they deal with ruthless politicians, the Wall Street vultures, the corporate vultures, down to frat boys, school bullies, homophobes, etc. And they really go into depth with scientific studies and interesting, people they're interviewing on why this proliferates and why it becomes acceptable in certain situations, and at some point people will actually make a conscious decision. I'm going to change my personality to be an asshole because I think it will make me more successful in this society. It's an interesting film, and it was 2019, a documentary. It's called Assholes: A Theory, and John Cleese is one of the guys in it. So
I do want to check that out.
It's not all heavy. There's some humor in it too, but and they qualified Trump as one of the assholes.
Where did you see this film?
I saw it through my local library system.
Oh, so it's out now, people.
But it's out. It's a 2019 documentary.
Wow, I want to check that out. All right, well, thank you very much. It's another great week, and hopefully we'll have Mike on next week. I think everything's going to clear up with
Mike Lano.
Yeah, Mike Lano. I think everything's going to clear up with him, so should have him on next week. And if we have some more fabulous guests, it'd be great. It's great having those two guys on this week.
I want you to watch 17 straight hours of WrestleMania next week and report on every move in detail, like the other shows do.
Yes, exactly. And what I could do is then write up how everything should be scripted the way I wanted it to be. So we can have two parallel shows,
And use words like intriguing, intriguing angles. That's what they also
best of all time. I'm going to use best of all time every match. I'm going to say this was the best third match of WrestleMania in the history of WrestleMania. This is the best, Becky Lynch match that's ever happened.
This one guy posted before. He says, I've watched every WrestleMania multiple times. And I just go, obsessive.
How do you find time for that unless you have nothing else to do?
I don't know, man.
I don't know either. I stopped around like WrestleMania 10 or 12. So I stopped, paying attention to every single second.
I like the guys who do I'm rewatching every main event, every episode of Main Event on the network because I want to study the booking. Like, talk about obsessed. It's scary.
Wow. Well, let's make it through another week so we can hook up again next week and add Mike to the show. Have a good one. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll see y'all next week. Thank you.